Hello, and welcome back to Misty Island. Last episode, Krudius returned to the house where he has taken residence and figured out some mysteries by communicating with the invisible woman. He learned that the cats that have made their home there are actually not actual cats, they are children, and they're part of the invisible woman's family. So Krudius is pretty upset by this news. He has, of course, figured out then that the curse is extending to the children as well, and he's wondering how many people this curse has really affected at this point. There are a lot of abandoned houses here on this island and a lot of people that he's not been able to find, so it's very possible that there's a bunch of people here with curses on them, and he's shaken by this. And this also puts a new light on Agreth and just what kind of evil witch she is. She has not only cursed adults, of course, she's also cursed children apparently, and that is pretty bad. So Krudius is definitely realizing what kind of person he's up against. So he's, in his desperation, flown all the way over to the lighthouse to have a little chat with someone who can actually understand him and talk to him and perhaps give him some answers. And that is, of course, Roger Seahand, the skeleton. Roger is currently out here fishing. As we know, he doesn't really need to eat anything, but he does have a golden fishing badge, so this is something that he does for sport, I would say. He needs to find some kind of fun here on the isolated island, so that's what he's been up to. So Krudius is going to walk over to him and they're gonna have a little chat. So Krudius tells him about his discoveries, about the invisible woman in the house that he's been living in, and her children, the cats. And well, from the description of the house, Roger of course understands what family Krudius is talking about, and his reaction is kind of, why are you surprised? You've met her husband after all. And Krudius is confused. I've met her husband. Are you talking about yourself? And Roger laughs and says, no, of course not. He's talking about Eugene, of course, the fisherman. Eugene, Krudius says. That old man said his name was Negue. And Roger laughs again. Oh no, that old man has it all backwards. Also, he's not really old. That's a very recent affliction. As a matter of fact, the skeleton says, I'm older than he is. And so Krudius kind of hits himself over the head and realizes that, of course, the old man's name is backwards. It's not Negue, it's Eugene. He's not sure why he hadn't thought about it with all the other cursed people around, but of course, the old man is also under a curse. And he's not really an old man after all, apparently. He's a family man, a father of young children, it turns out. So Krudius realizes that he has a good source of information right here, and they should collaborate about trying to figure out this riddle and how to break these curses, because Krudius realizes that breaking the curse on the people is probably going to lead him to breaking the curse on the island itself. So he decides to do what he can to share the experiences that he has with the different people in order to fill in the blanks and learn what the skeleton knows and compare notes, basically. So Krudius starts to tell Roger about the family house that he's been living in. Of course, they're starting to talk about that family, and Roger tells him that that's the Whitdane family. It's Eugene and his wife Norma, the invisible woman, and then their 3 children, Fred, Jane, and Mildred. Fred is apparently a teenager, and the 2 girls are children. And actually, Roger is quite good friends with Eugene. Whenever he's been traveling to the docks, of course, he's the one that he's been going to meet and interact with. So Roger and Eugene spent many a night, drinking and fishing and conversing, and Eugene is a good friend. So, of course, in extension, Roger knows quite a bit about his family, even though he doesn't know a lot about the others. Then Krudius goes on to change the topic to the crest glooms, and he tells Roger about the family house that he's been visiting and what he found there and what he found out about that family. And Roger is actually a little familiar with them as well. The late Richard Crestgloom was also a good friend. Of course, he was everyone's friend, so Roger was not an exemption there. So he actually came out to the lighthouse every now and then. He really loved standing at the top of the lighthouse and looking out at the sea. And Roger says that he was a bit of a born sailor. He often talked about how he wanted to buy a ship and sail all over the world on adventures. But something was keeping him here on the island, of course, his family mainly. And it was something that they discussed a lot with Roger's past experiences as well. So, of course, Roger knows about Richard and then Nora, and also, of course, about their little girl, Audrey, that Krudius only has seen a quick glimpse of. And he read, of course, in Nora's third diary that her daughter's name was Audrey, so that's not news to him. And of course Krudius is curious know what Roger knows about that little girl. He says that he's seen her, and of course Roger is happy to hear that she's still alive and safe. And Roger tells him that he doesn't know that much about her, he never met her, but of course being friends with her loving father, that man was doting on her a lot, and he often talked very proudly about her, childhood achievements, but not very much on a personal level, of course. That topic, of course, leads them into the Morndream family as well, and of course Aigreth, Krudius is already familiar with, and Roger tells him that she's been an evil witch for as long as he's known her, but things have only just escalated the last 3 years after the sudden thunderstorm and the sudden curse. He also says that he never met him, but he knew that she had a husband called Walter, someone who was known to be very reliable around the island, someone who often helped out with repairs, those kinds of things, and he was the scholarly type, so he often was the one you went to for advice if you needed something done or some big decision that you needed to make. Then he was sort of the wise man on the island. And Krudius tells Roger that those are the only families he knows about, but of course he's seen more empty houses, and Roger says, yeah, there's 3 more families that I can think of. There's the Warthorns, that's James and Carolyn. They were hunters and sort of forest keepers, and they had 2 young boys as well. Roger doesn't recall their names, but he did meet with James every now and then. He came along to have a drink sometimes at the docks as well. So he also heard about those young boys, but he can't recall their names at the top of his head. Roger also tells Krudius about a young artist that hasn't lived on the island for very long, but he quickly made himself famous, or perhaps infamous, for taking on a lot of big projects and never finishing them. A lot of people wanted him to, make paintings and, kinds of different projects like statues or, They commissioned a lot of stuff from him, and he started up on the projects, but no one really were able to collect. So he quickly became known as being pretty unreliable. But he was a free spirit as far as Roger understood, and was a bit of a dreamer, a pretty romantic guy. People often made fun of that. So yeah, Roger has never met him personally, but he's heard quite a bit of stories about him. Roger struggles to remember exactly what his name was, but he says it was something with tree in it. Then Krudius points out that there's one more house that's not accounted for as a house where he found a lot of sewing things, some sort of tailor's office or something like that. And Roger says that, right, he heard about a young woman moving in a few years ago. He doesn't know a lot about her. She's another one of those he's never met, but he did hear that she was very beautiful. So their conversation goes on, and Krudius realizes that there's quite a lot to unpack here, so he actually asks Roger to walk into the lighthouse and sit down together, because this is gonna take a while. So they're gonna head into here and sit down at the dinner table. So Krudius starts by telling Roger a little bit about the way that he can break curses. He needs to understand the person that the curse is on, and mostly he needs to figure out the nature of the curse. Like, why, for example, would Roger have become a skeleton? Like, what connection does he have to skeletons? And Roger says that, well, he hates them. He used to work as a deckhand for a sea captain who made his living from diving into sunken ships. Or, well, the sea captain himself never dove down to the sunken ships. He had his crew members do that. So Roger was one of those misfortunate people who had to dive deep down. And of course, at the bottom of the sea, in the wreckages, there were quite a bit of skeletons. And he also had quite a few crew members who never made it back up again, and also, of course, at the end became one of those skeletons. So he tells Krudius that he used to have nightmares about that, you know, getting stuck down there and becoming one of them. So he hates skeletons, really. Well, at least he used to. Now he's sort of desensitized to it, I suppose. And then Krudius goes on to ask why Eugene would have become an old man who had lost his memory. And Roger tells him that they've spent many a late night drinking, and they always ended the same those nights. Eugene would become emotional and start talking about how Alzheimer's disease is running in his family, and how he had to take care of his own father, who eventually didn't even remember his own son. So Eugene has always, you know, been very sensitive about growing older and what that could mean for him personally as well. So if he knew what was going on, he would probably be living his own nightmare right now. Then Krudius asks why Norma would have become invisible and incapable of speech, and Roger actually laughs hearing that and says that anyone who has met her would know that instantly. She's a terrible chatterbox. She won't shut up about anything. She needs to constantly be talking to and be around people. And then Krudius asks about the children. What connection do they have to cats? Why would they have been turned into cats? And Roger says that he unfortunately doesn't know. He never met them, and he can't recall that Eugene never mentioned anything about that. So with those clues, Krudius is sort of thinking aloud and asks Roger, would you say that you're afraid of skeletons? And Roger says that, well, not anymore, but in the past, certainly, I've been terrified of skeletons. And that is everything that Krudius needs to hear. He tells Roger that, you know, it's very possible in that case that this curse is connected to fears, you know, your deepest, most terrible fears. And knowing that, he should be able to try to give it a go and break the curse on Roger. And of course, Roger says, you know, go for it. What harm does it do if it doesn't work? Let's try it. So they're gonna go ahead and walk back outside, where it's a little bit more easy. to cast magic. So they're both out here ready to go, and Krudius is going to go ahead and cast a spell on Roger, and it's Purgo Magnus. So Roger has transformed back into a man. He is a living being once again, and Krudius is going to walk up to him and just tell him that now that this is done, they need to head back to the docks to also do the same to Eugene. And yeah, of course, Roger is cursing and, being angry about the things that's been done to him, and he has a grudge to the witch, of course. Now that he has his body back, he can, of course, feel all the feelings that were repressed as a skeleton, and, all the horror that he's been through, and, he's gonna be able to go back to normal and, feel things on his skin again. Be able to smell and taste and be hungry and get tired, all of these things that just haven't happened for him ever since the curse. So he's very grateful to Krudius, of course. That goes without saying. So they're actually gonna head off together to the docks to see what they can do about Eugene as well. So Krudius and Roger have taken the boat and have arrived here at the docks, and apparently Roger is starting to get really, familiar around Krudius. I bet that after all that they've been going through together, Roger is really seeing Krudius as a friend at this point. And, if we take a look at the relationships that Krudius has so far, he definitely is friends with Roger, even though in the long term they don't know each other very well, but they've been spending a lot of time together, so actually they're friends now. So that's nice. And so of course, to no one's surprise, we have old Eugene out here fishing. What else? So Krudius is gonna head up to him, and of course Roger as well. And he caught a fish, actually. That's nice. See that Roger wants to joke with him the first thing he does, but I'm in fact not going to waste any time. Well, rather they are not going to waste any time, because they know that whatever they say to Eugene now, however much they try to explain to him, he's not going to remember anyway. So Krudius is going to go ahead and just cast the spell on the old man. And Eugene Whitdane is his own self again. This is what he actually is supposed to look like. As you might have seen, he is a middle-aged man. Where is he? There he is. Good. So now he's back to his, his true self. And Roger is gonna give him a friendly hug, Welcome back, old man, or old chap. But as Roger already told Krudius, he's actually a lot older than Eugene is. He has 5 days left until he becomes an elder, and Eugene actually has 15 days. So there's a bit of an age difference there. So, of course, Roger is gonna tell Eugene what has happened. And, of course, Eugene is horrified at what has happened to him and what the state is of his family. And now that Roger is telling Eugene that it was, in fact, Krudius who was the one who broke the curse and helped him, and that he is also perhaps able to help his family, then of course Eugene is going to be very, very grateful to Krudius. And to Krudius's horror and mixed disbelief, he walks up to him and gives him a warm hug. Now, this is not something that Krudius is used to at all. He's not someone who gets hugs ever. So this is very, very strange for him. And of course he accepts the hug. He doesn't push Eugene away or anything, but he's feeling very, very awkward right now, and quickly suggests that the three of them head over to the Whitdane house to see what they can do about Eugene's family. And of course he's very, very eager to do that himself. So actually the three of them are gonna head up here together to the road. And they're gonna head up to walk back together to the Whitdane house and see what they can do about the family. And this is where we'll leave them for today.